They're the secrets of ancient Egypt, which for thousands of years lay submerged beneath the Mediterranean.
When we think of Egypt, many images come to mind, such as pyramids, mummies, hieroglyphs, the Nile River, and luxurious cat statues. However, there is much more to this fantastic and unique period of history. In this video, I will talk about the most unusual things that ancient Egyptians did. Criminals, you may have heard about how ancient Egyptians revered cats, but did you know that they also held baboons in high regard? For them, these were true animal police officers. Apparently, Egyptian authorities kept baboons on leashes and released them on criminals when necessary. Among the classic hieroglyphs and works of art, including a fragment called Ancient Kingdom from the 5th dynasty, circa 2498-2345 BC, baboons are depicted capturing thieves or other criminals, biting them or holding them by the leg. In addition to helping the police, these animals were also trained to collect fruits, brew beer, and dance. They were so revered in Egyptian culture that tattoos with their images were found on the bodies of some mummies. While archaeologists found mummified human bodies in Egypt, they also discovered crocodile remains. Their mummies were preserved, but not always in the same way as humans. For example, in 2019, during excavations of an untouched tomb in the necropolis of Kabad al-Hawa on the west bank of the Nile River, 10 reptiles were found mummified without the use of resin, which is essential in the mummification process. However, the discovery of well-preserved mummified crocodiles is not uncommon for researchers. It is believed that ancient people used these animals as sacred offerings, using them as a kind of food for the inhabitants of the afterlife or for the reincarnations of specific deities. In particular, crocodiles were associated with Sobek, the god of water, and the flooding of the Nile. Ancient Egyptians didn't neglect the issue of fresh breath. Using pumice, they ground up bull hooves, ash, and burnt eggshells into a powder, which they applied to their teeth and gums to protect their mouth from hygiene problems. It's believed that this method was quite effective, at least when it came to mechanical cleaning. However, from a general health perspective, it was probably not the best since it caused significant bleeding of the gums. At various times, Egyptians also used a combination of pepper, iris flowers, and rock salt for teeth cleaning. Interestingly, they were among the first to invent toothbrushes, or chew sticks as they were called then. They made these instruments from branches, using one side as a toothpick and the other as a toothbrush. Representatives of this civilization also developed their own version of mint candies, made from a mixture of boiled herbs and spices, such as frankincense or cinnamon, mixed with honey, that could be chewed or sucked on. Probably guessed that we'd be returning to cats in this video. Egyptians' love for these animals was no joke. They believed that cats brought good luck to those who owned them, and therefore treated them with particular reverence. Moreover, they loved their cats so much that when the animal died, all family members shaved off their eyebrows to mourn its death and continued to grieve until their eyebrows grew back. Egyptians, including Cleopatra, bathed in sour milk, usually donkey milk, to improve their skin's appearance and condition. Today, we know that sour milk contains lactic acid, which is a natural alpha-hydroxy acid. Such acids exfoliate the surface of the skin so that new, more evenly pigmented skin cells can form and take their place. In Cleopatra's case, it is said that 7,000 donkeys were required for her daily baths to provide enough milk. At least she didn't let it go to waste. As already mentioned, ancient Egyptians were quite clever and resourceful, but their method of healing wounds with moldy bread may seem a bit strange. However, it was actually effective and became a precursor to penicillin and other antibiotics used today. This method worked because the mold on bread was typically a fungus that produced certain chemical compounds that killed or suppressed the growth of bacteria around the cut, scratch, or any other open wound. Hatshepsut was an Egyptian female pharaoh during the 18th dynasty. The only problem was that she was a woman, and female pharaohs, of whom there were only 3, were not as respected as their male counterparts. Although ancient Egypt was known for its gender equality, this did not extend to their rulers. In any case, Hatshepsut decided to take matters into her own hands and began wearing a long beard in the ancient Egyptian style to appear more masculine. Some artistic depictions of her often feature this fake beard. King Pepe II, according to legend, holds the record for the longest reign in ancient Egypt, ruling for a whopping 9 decades if the legend is true. He ascended to the throne at the age of 6 and lived until his middle or late 90s, governing during the 6th dynasty. However, many modern Egyptologists dispute this claim, suggesting that Pepe II ruled for about 64 years instead. If this is accurate, then Pepe II would be the second longest reigning pharaoh after Ramesses II, also known as Ramesses the Great, who ruled for over 66 years during the 19th dynasty. Canopic jars were vessels used to store and preserve the internal organs of a deceased person during mummification, which were then buried with them. Each jar held a separate organ. The first held the lungs, the second the liver, the third the intestines, and the fourth the stomach. The heart, considered the seat of a person's soul, remained in the body. Initially, these jars were simple and undecorated, but over time they became increasingly ornate. Eventually, they represented the 4 gods known as the sons of Horus: Hapi, who had the head of a baboon and held the lungs; Duamutef, with the head of a jackal, holding the stomach; Imseti, with a human head, holding the liver; and Kebesenwef, with the head of a falcon, holding the intestines. In ancient Egypt, tattoos were not an unusual practice, though this aspect of their culture is often overlooked. Archaeologists have unearthed mummies dating back to the 11th dynasty adorned with tattoos, and there are also depictions of living women with tattooed dots and swirls on their lower chest, abdomen, and thighs. Historians suggest that these tattoos, particularly due to their placement, were associated with seeking protection and blessings from the gods during pregnancy. It was believed that only women of high status received tattoos. Over time, tattoo designs became more intricate, often resembling depictions of deities as a form of homage. The process of tattooing was ritualistic, beginning with the creation of a flat brush made of an odd number of needles tied together, typically 3, 7, or 9. Each of these numbers held significance in Egyptian culture. The brush was dipped in charcoal soot or indigo powder, and then punctured into the skin, with the soot and indigo possessing antiseptic properties to prevent infection. After completion, the tattooed area was rubbed with various herbs and oils to aid in healing and fixing the coloring agents. This careful process reflects the significance and reverence attached to tattooing in ancient Egyptian society. Ancient Egyptians held beer and bread in high regard, using them not only as dietary staples but also as a form of currency between traders. Beer and bread were considered essential offerings to the gods and deceased ancestors, playing a central role in religious rituals and ceremonies. It's even suggested that soldiers and the approximately 10,000 workers who built the pyramids were compensated with beer and bread. Such was the significance of these commodities that shortages or failures in production were viewed as signs of divine displeasure. If beer and bread became scarce due to flooding or insufficient crop yields, it was interpreted as an indication that the gods were unhappy with the people. This underscores the deep cultural and symbolic importance of beer and bread in ancient Egyptian society. An interesting fact about mummification is that its invention is attributed not to the ancient Egyptians, but to the South Americans, who were believed to have practiced it 2,000 years before the first Egyptian mummification. The Egyptians adopted mummification to preserve the deceased for the afterlife. The process was intricate, with each step requiring precision. One crucial step involved wrapping the body in cloth, requiring lengths exceeding 1.5 kilometers. It's worth noting that mummification was a privilege reserved for the wealthy in ancient Egyptian society. After drying and wrapping the body, it was placed in a stone sarcophagus, often adorned with carvings or paintings, and accompanied by special objects like jugs, figurines, and mummified animals. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'll catch you in the next video. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content. Much appreciated. See you soon.